What the Tech is sponsored by IT Dev Connection in Las Vegas, September 15th to the 19th. Register now using offer code TECH14 to save $200.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Adrian Zarian on this Apple-centric What the Tech. A lot of Apple talk today, Paul.
Yeah.
Hey, for people who don't know,
people, it's also Patch Tuesday, so
it's also
we have a
Patch
lot
Tuesday.
to talk about.
I'm going to discuss the Apple part. Paul's going to talk about what kernel panics would happen if you did a Patch Tuesday. Oh no, Windows doesn't. You don't get kernel panics.
No.
Windows does not get kernel panics.
We get something equally famous.
Yeah. Even worse. Terrifying, actually. Which I've had 4 blue screens in 2 days. It's all hardware related, guys. Remember, get rid of that old video card. This is a show where we talk about technology, not necessarily tech news. We just two guys sitting at a bar and talking about tech. And after this announcement today, after that iWatch thing, I'm gonna need a lot of drinking this afternoon. Apple had.
By the way, we shouldn't jump ahead to the iWatch.
Yes.
However,
we'll go in order.
The one thing I will say is, obviously with Steve Jobs passing away a few years ago, and Apple events are a huge deal. They always have been. I mean, people give this kind of undue credence to how awesome they are at presenting. But the truth is, over the years, there have been some mind-numbingly boring stuff that happens at these Apple events. We saw some of that today with the incredibly long and awful video with the Johnny Ive voiceover for the iWatch. But, Steve Jobs used to do this stuff too. And he used to sit up there on stage and just pedantically go over every single new feature in a product like, iPhoto was the one I sort of remember, or, iMovie or whatever. He used to beat stuff to death sometimes as well. And,
sure.
Today, they could have cut that thing by 2/3 and it would have been fine. I felt like the problem with the iWatch thing is, there was legitimate excitement around the iPhone, and the iPhone was awesome. There was legitimate excitement about the iPad, and the iPad was born out to be something awesome. It wasn't immediately obvious that it was awesome, and who knows? The iWatch could turn out like that. I really don't believe that, but I just feel like this was forced. This was. You could see in Tim Cook, he came out at one point and he was, pumping his arms in the air. And I thought, man, this is a guy who exudes calm, but he is really suffering.
He's not a hype man.
From feelings of inadequacy and is reading and thinking about those reports where people are saying, he needs to put his own stamp on the business. He needs to put out his own product. They're just riding the wave of stuff that Steve Jobs did. And then, of course, the way he introduces it to say is like one more thing. And you're like, God, seriously.
But you know what, though? He has put his own stamp on this company. This is a different company.
You are absolutely correct. And
the iPad Mini.
It's a subtle thing. I think from the perspective of most consumers, normal people, they would not understand that statement. But actually, Tim Cook has made huge changes at Apple that I think are very important and make this product and the software that runs on it much more interesting than the iPhone 5 was, or the 5S or whatever, going back years, because he's changed the way Apple does.
I mean, the philosophy was set in years ago by Steve Jobs, and the fundamental workings of Apple was set in, and that was not going to disappear overnight. But this is the first generation of devices that we are starting to see, and changes we are starting to see, that it is all Tim Cook. And the first example I could give you, and the best way that I could describe this, is the keyboard. The fact that you could install a third-party keyboard on this thing, something that Steve Jobs, who knows if he would have done it, but at that time, he wanted nothing to do with it.
Oh, he never would have done it.
Yeah.
I literally just re-listened to the Steve Jobs autobiography. When you listen to that, you realize, no, this would never have happened. He was in fact, some of the last discussions that he had with Bill Gates was around the all-in-one model like Apple does, or the partnering model that Microsoft does, and to each other's face, they were both very complementary. Both ways work, yada yada yada, and then they separate from each other. And Bill Gates says, to be honest, the only reason this worked was because of Steve Jobs. Like, this type of thing doesn't work anywhere. And Steve Jobs said of, Bill Gates, to be honest, they sold more, but what they made was crap. And this is the only way to do it. And, he was literally dying at that time. I mean, he was not giving up on this.
No, he was not. It was an interesting announcement in the sense that is this the first design that Tim Cook has been in charge of? This is his overlooking.
It's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, I would be surprised if there wasn't some early aspect of this that, where the work was done under Steve Jobs. Obviously, Apple hasn't launched their TV efforts. And so we know Steve Jobs was working on that. I think the fair thing to say is that the product that came out today is partially, Tim Cook's responsibility or is influenced heavily by him because it's not possible that a lot of the stuff they just announced was around 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Sure. So they announced two iPhones, a 4.7-inch iPhone 6 and a 5.5-inch iPhone 6 Plus.
Yes.
Beautiful design, beautiful phone. Nothing you could say about this as far aesthetically. That's bad. Yeah. Very thin. I mean, did you see 6.9 millimeter for the 6, 7.1 for the Plus? So they're a little bigger on the Plus. I don't know why.
Let me just show you this because this is an iPod Touch, and people aren't really buying these things anymore. But just to be clear, this is that design. I mean, it is the same. It right down to the. Oh, I got it backwards. The camera. Hello.
Yes. You got
it? The camera, which has the same little. It's the same. I don't mean it's the same internally, but it's the same design.
Yeah.
And the two things that have always struck me about this device, because this debuted 2 years ago, which was when the iPhone 5 debuted. The iPhone 5 was obviously kind of a stretched version of the iPhone 4 and 4S. This thing has curved sides, not hardened, sharpened edges, and it's really thin. And when you hold this thing next to an iPhone, as cool as an iPhone is, an iPhone 5S is a beautiful device. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But when you hold this thing side by side, you immediately love the fact that this thing is so thin.
Yeah, very thin.
And that because of the curved sides, you can actually hold it in your hand and it doesn't hurt. The iPhone sharp edges, it actually hurts to hold that phone. It's something no one really talks about. I don't know why, but you can't hold it normally and not be like, oh, this is, And so, I guess cynically you could say, oh, well, Apple's reusing their design from the iPod Touch. And I made that crack on Twitter. But the truth is, I'm really glad they did, because for 2 years now, every time I look at this device, I think, man, this is so much nicer.
I mean, look at that. I mean, it's a really pretty device.
Yeah.
I mean, the display is stunning. And we were talking about this yesterday. My issue with the iPhone is the fact that the bezel, it's thin on the sides now, but the top and bottom, there's a lot of room.
Right.
I mean, a tremendous amount of room. When you compare it to, this is a 5.2-inch phone right here that I'm holding up. And you can see that it's, you got about an inch on the bottom and you got an inch on the top on this thing. The iPhone, it's much larger. It
is larger, yeah.
The bezel, because they got to kind of balance it out, right, for the Touch ID.
I think they've maintained the aspect ratio or whatever. But when you look at these two devices next to an iPhone 5S or 5C, what you see are roughly the same dimensions. Like they look. It really looks like you took a picture of an iPhone 5S from the front and kind of stretched it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's purposeful. I don't know if they felt like some combination of the thinness of the device and the amount of stuff they wanted to get in there, plus the battery, that they needed that space or whatever. I obviously I need to see one in person. I don't think it detracts. I look at the pictures of these devices and I think, these are nice looking. That doesn't bother me personally.
Yeah, the design is perfectly fine. The specs, bigger and better, everything. Do you have any of the specs in front of you? Because I'm having a problem looking at it.
Okay. So if you go to apple.com/iPhone/compare, you can see a nice breakdown of the specs.
Sadly, I can't get to that site. It's
okay. So, the screen, like you said, it's 1080p on the 5.5 version. It's a weird one. It's like a 750p kind of on the 4.7. I think it's 1344 by 750, which again I assume is just to maintain the aspect ratio so that developers don't have to target so many different types of devices, because you can target these bigger devices explicitly, but Apple will obviously auto size if you don't, and we know that from other smartphone platforms. So, I mean, that works out fine. It's an A8 chip, which is obviously the next gen version. Off the top of my head, I want to say he said it was 25% faster and I think 50% more energy efficient than the previous gen.
Which it's going to need to, because obviously the display is much larger. So
Yep. Both of them support Touch ID. The new the sensor that they first put on the 5S. Both of them have a faster form of LTE, and I didn't catch what that meant, but the previous versions were LTE. These are faster LTE. I don't know what that means.
Voice over LTE as well.
Voice over LTE. What do they call that? Just Wi-Fi calling, I guess.
I believe it's G.722 is a codec that they use, and they call it HD.
I'm mixing this up.
Yeah, they call it HD voice. And
so it's voice over IP, but it works over LTE.
It works over LTE, but it's not like Skype. You're not going to get Skype quality. So it's better.
This is probably the future of phone calling. Is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
8 megapixel camera. This one I'm a little confused by. The iPhone 5S and 5C both have 8 megapixel cameras. The 5S version I think was a little better in some way that I can no longer recall. This one has optical image stabilization, but only on the 5.5 version. They talked about the stuff they talk about, pixels and focus pixels is a new feature. So I need to look in. This is another one. I can't wait to try this. But the thing I'll say about this is I did expect them to go up from a megapixel perspective, just as part of the natural iteration of the thing. They didn't. But the iPhone 5S camera is spectacular, and I would be shocked if this wasn't spectacular. I bet it's even better.
I'm curious on how much better it is when you compare the two.
Right. And it's funny, my original plan was obviously I'm going to get one of these devices. And so I was going to sell my iPhone 5S over the past week or so when the going's good, get $350 for it. And then I thought, wait, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I need to compare these things. So I'm going to keep it, and I'll get rid of it later, but for now I'll keep it for my eventual review because I really want to compare these things. What else? Obviously, the three colors.
And Paul, they did mention that the sensor was different on the Plus, right?
Yeah, and the different. I believe the only difference. In fact, I think I have it somewhere here. Yeah. So actually, when you compare these things side by side, so both of them have autofocus with what they're calling focus pixels. Previous, it was just autofocus. The aperture is the same. It's an f2.22. The high-end version, the bigger one, has optical image stabilization, which is actually a huge deal. This is the thing, and this is the first for an iPhone, by the way, and they've already taken really great pictures. When I talked to Nokia about a year or so ago about the 1020, the Lumia 1020, this is the type of hardware they could not build into the camera at the time because they weren't part of Microsoft. They couldn't influence the platform in that way. And it's the type of thing they would have built in if they could have. I believe. I could be, because someone's out there is listening and saying, no, Paul, that's not it. But they didn't have the ability to put hardware camera functionality in there that they wanted. And I'm curious if this is that kind of thing. It has True Tone Flash, which debuted on the 5S. 5-element lens, which probably goes back to the 4S or the 5.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada. A lot of this stuff is auto image stabilization across the board. That's probably software based. Auto HDR goes back to the 5S. Improved face detection on both of them versus, face detection. I don't know what the improvement is there. Panorama up to 43 megapixels.
Yeah, I got excited when I heard 43 megapixels.
I know I did too, because it was stuttering at the time. I missed a lot of the photo stuff. I wanted to hear and then expected to hear that the high-end camera, the high-end version would be better in some way, and it's really only better in that optical image stabilization. For example, I heard that they had said 8 megapixels for the low-end one, and I thought, okay, surely the higher-end one will be 11 megapixels or whatever, but it's not. And that's about it. I mean, the rest of it's not very different. They talked about 1080p HD video. It can do 60 frames a second now versus 30.
Gradual improvement.
Video stabilization. continuous autofocus. Most of it's the same.
Yeah. I'm trying to now when it comes to the size, the 4.7 and the 5.5. I think for a lot of people, the 5.5 is going to be startlingly big.
Well, maybe. So is it 5.5? That's it, like Note 2 size, I think. Isn't that 5.5?
This is 5.5. The phone
That's
that I have right
5.5.
here. So this is 5.5. This is 5.2. So I don't know if this is doing any justice to it. Let me see if I can switch the camera. So here, maybe this might help a little bit more. So this is the difference. I mean, there is a big difference between 5.1 and 5.5.
The thing is, over the summer, I became very used to using the 1520, the Lumia 1520. It's a 6-inch screen. That's big. I mean, it's a big screen. This isn't coming on right now, but like a 6-inch screen, the big one, versus 4.7.
Okay.
Over here, which is a Google phone. There's a big difference in size, obviously, between the two devices. But I think that they're threading the needle here. I would argue, and I have argued this past year, especially that 5 inches is kind of the ideal size for a smartphone in 2014. 5.5 is obviously phablet territory, is literally a phablet. Not everyone's going to like that, but my wife is a normally sized human being. She uses a Note 2, loves it. Will almost certainly get whatever the next Note is whenever her contract comes up. I think it's in January. I think these are the right sizes. I mean, and to be clear, this eliminates the single biggest complaint I've had about the iPhone now for years, which is the size thing.
Yeah.
The previous screen and the size of the device is just too small. And I've played a lot with this. There's things you can do in iOS to kind of bump up the contrast. You can bump up the size of fonts in a lot of applications, but not all applications. But you're still staring at this kind of postage stamp size 4-inch screen. And 4 inches to 4.7 doesn't seem like a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
Huge deal.
100%. That's a big boost.
Yeah.
In size.
It's a huge deal. I think both of these are going to be spectacular. I bet the 4.7 inch sells better. I want the 5.5, and not just for the improvements in the camera, but just because I'm now used to this larger kind of device myself, and I think this is the way to go.
I think for a lot of people that have been, keeping up. If you're coming from the Android side, right? And I brought this up as an example on the shock that a lot of iPhone users are going to have when they go in to buy this phone. Mm-hmm. As an Android user, I have gradually gotten a bigger phone. Started out with a 4-inch phone, then went to a 4.2-inch phone, and then a 4.7, and then a 5, and then now I'm at a 5.5. So I've had 4 years to kind of slowly get a bigger phone. For a lot, I mean, going from a 4-inch phone to a 4.7-inch phone, I think a lot of people are going to be a little caught off guard with a larger display. And I've also heard the argument, a lot of people, and I don't want to generalize here, but a lot of women that I know do not want a bigger phone. They're fine with a 4-inch phone. And it's mostly women that are saying, I don't want a bigger phone. Now, again, it's going to be different for everybody, but I'm talking about the people around me, the women around me, they don't want a bigger phone. But
here's the thing. Apple is selling 4 phones now.
They are.
And 2 of them have 4-inch screens. I think the interesting thing is going to happen next year because, as you know, and you've actually complained about this a lot, as Apple kind of moves forward with devices, they continue to sell the old devices. I don't think it's going to be appropriate to do that this year because they're going to need an iPhone 6 class 4-inch device on the low end for next year. I think,
what are they going to do?
Unless 4.7 just becomes the base. There's no way to know that, and I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I would say for the next year, you have great options for 4-inch phones from Apple if that's what you want. I agree with you, by the way, that people who have stuck to the Apple ecosystem are probably used to that size device. That said, there's no way they don't look at Android phones and think, geez, I'd love to have a screen like that. I mean, I think a lot of those people are going to be quite happy to go up to 4.7 at the very least. And so I think this 4.7 thing is going to be the best-selling iPhone in history. I mean, I think it's going to be huge.
Oh, no, it's going to be humongous. The other thing that they added that I think is a little overlooked is the front-facing camera. They upgraded the front-facing camera for better selfies. And, Paul, I have to tell you, I see more people taking a picture with a front-facing camera than I see them with a regular, the rear-facing camera.
Yeah. By the way, that's a good point. I went to a Red Sox game over the weekend, and I actually kind of commented on this. I was really shocked by how many people we saw this in Barcelona too, though. How many people are taking pictures of themselves instead of taking pictures of the thing they're doing. And it's like, here's a picture of me. I'm at Fenway Park. You can't see Fenway Park in the picture. You get to see them.
See them in the seat.
And it's like, there's like a blurry green thing behind him, and it's like, where are you there? It's like, I don't know, Fenway Park, or maybe that's somewhere else, my backyard. I don't. People love taking pictures of themselves, and so whatever. I don't know why.
We discussed the selfie stick.
Yeah, I don't know why I need to be critical of this, but I mean, it's clear that these front cameras are important, and so.
Well, to further blow your mind, how we have the selfie stick, and we spoke. You brought it up. In Europe, everybody has a selfie stick. There's something called a selfie brush.
Oh my god!
Where it's a brush, and on the back you slide your iPhone, and you use it as a selfie
so it's
stick.
a dual use thing.
Dual use, yeah.
Okay.
Amazing. No, but the front-facing camera, the upgrades to that are actually really good, and from the picture quality, because a lot of these front-facing cameras have not been upgraded in for a long time. They kind of half-ass it, even on this, it's kind of half-assed on my brand new phone. Now, where do you want to go from? Oh, so 64-bit architecture, A8 chip.
Yeah, iOS 8, big deal. By the way, so mobile payments I think is huge. The two new devices have NFC, which we've had in Android and Windows Phone for years. But I think the big benefit here is that thanks to Apple's power in the marketplace, they're going to push through mobile payments and make it happen in the United States. When Microsoft announced Windows Phone 8 2 years ago, they announced NFC, they announced mobile wallet, mobile payments. Their first partner was France, and it was the Orange wireless carrier in France. It requires a special kind of SIM, by the way, for you to do that. And, we'll take it from there. And here we are 2 years later, and it has gone nowhere. Apple will make this happen, and that's going to benefit everybody. So even if you don't buy an iPhone, this mobile payment thing is going to be everywhere. And so if you have an Android device and hopefully a Windows Phone, I think the next year is going to be really big for mobile payments as well. It's not just going to be Apple. But,
but let me ask you this, Paul. Have you used mobile payment in a restaurant?
You mean where you tap like a tap to pay kind of thing?
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Like how?
No, I've never done that.
So they showed how you could use OpenTable to pay for it, which I think is great.
Well, except that you're also, mobile payment gets, OpenTable gtes a chunk of that, by the way. If you like the restaurant and care about those people, you should actually not.
You should not. But for convenience sake, you could do that. But how would you use the NFC stuff in a restaurant? You really can't.
Well, you can. If you go, McDonald's has these.
McDonald's, I'm talking like a real restaurant.
Theoretically, but anyone should be able to do that. There's no reason they can. You're talking. It's like getting a Square device. Square is free. There's no way we're not going to see NFC things in little mobile devices in restaurants everywhere. This is going to be the way payments are done. In Europe, they have a chip and pin system on their credit cards. So you stick your credit card into a mobile device, and then you enter your pin in a keypad. And that's your two-factor. Well, it's sort of your two-factor authentication, but it's how that thing is kept secure. We don't really have that in the United States. We're starting to get chips on our credit cards, but it's chip and signature, and the signature is the second thing that ensures you're you.
Yeah.
But signature, that's bullshit. That's useless. And so this kind of system, actually, clearly this is the future of payments. Clearly, the notion of sending out pieces of plastic to everyone and we're, scanning them physically through machines is ridiculous. This is going to go away. And so Apple, again, we complain about Apple, we make fun of Apple, but they're going to make this happen, and they should be saluted for that because they really do have the power. Everyone wants to partner with Microsoft. With Microsoft, yeah. Everyone wants to partner with Apple. No one wants to partner with Microsoft.
Well, the NFL has for a couple $1 million.
Yeah, well, right. You can pay people to get them to do what you want, but the Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Macy's. I almost said Sears because it's the 1980s.
And Stearns. Did you guys have a
whatever
Stearns?
Retailer you can't have mentioned?
Alexander's.
Alex and Annie, whatever. They all want to partner with Apple, all of them, and so they'll push this through beautifully.
I'm curious on how this is gonna make NFC a big thing compared to what Google's been doing, because a lot of places have NFC available, like gas station. My gas station has it. Yeah. I've never used it. I don't know anybody that ever uses it. Have you?
Nope.
No. See, so I'm curious if Apple will be able to bring that to the forefront where it becomes a normal thing.
I honestly think they absolutely will. There will be people who don't even understand they can do this. There'll be people fumbling in their wallet with their iPhone in the wallet for a card. And the guy will be like, listen, you can just tap your phone on this thing and make this happen.
Yeah.
And they won't even know. But seriously, Apple, by virtue of their popularity, especially, the United States is obviously in some ways one of the ultimate markets for digital devices and things like that. But we also lag behind certain technologies, including payments. And this is the perfect storm for this kind of stuff, because you get a market of people who are very eager to buy Apple products. They're going to be very eager to use these things out in the world and show off these capabilities to their friends and to people they don't even know. And it's all of this stuff is going to combine to make this happen. And again, like I said, this will benefit everybody. And so Windows Phone will get this capability in the United States now, just by virtue of the fact that Apple's kind of pushed it out. Yeah.
By the way, Apple killed the iPod Classic.
I didn't hear. How do you know that?
I'm reading the reports now.
Really?
iPod Classic is gone.
That's interesting.
R.I.P. Click Wheel.
How does anyone even know that?
I'm getting like 4 people reporting it.
Oh no, I'm not saying it wrong. I'm just
I guess in the store it's gone.
Okay, I was gonna say if you go to apple.com/iPod, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, so that's probably what it is. iPod Classic comes to an end. Apple removes the iPod Classic from the store. Yeah. So
I mean,
that was the last of its generation. That was the last of its kind. That thing.
They hadn't actually improved it in years and years.
It's been sitting there. So where do I?
I mean, you can only go up to 64 gigs on an iPod Touch. They're gonna have to fix that.
Yeah. So what do you do with? I'm trying to figure this out now. Mm-hmm. You have the 5S. You have the 5C. No more 5, right? The 5 is off. It's gone.
5's gone. Yep.
Is this the first time that the 4S has not been sold? I think so.
Yes, because that was the free version before.
Yeah. So they have gone all Lightning Bolt.
Lightning connector.
Lightning connector. Yeah, Lightning Bolt. Yep. Lightning connector.
So actually, that's interesting.
Except for the iPod 2. iPad 2.
I don't think they sell the iPad 2 anymore, do they?
Let's go find out. I think they do.
No, I don't think so. Let's see.
No, it's not on the website. There you go. So that's gone
because
too.
The iPad with Retina is the 4th gen version that has Lightning, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Let's see what it says.
I want to buy an iPad. What do I buy? iPad Mini with Retina, iPad Air.
Yep.
So, okay. So that's gone too. So it's all Lightning.
Yeah, that's it. I would say today was the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's totally streamlined. So that's a positive. I want to talk about the watch, Paul.
Okay.
But before
I'm not as well versed in the watch. I have to say I nodded off during that.
So I watched that entire thing and okay. I have so much to say about it. But before I do that, before I go into the watch, let's talk about our Patreon campaign. We have a Patreon campaign and we have a special call-in show taking place in about 25 minutes. So we're going to do phone calls in about 25 minutes here on the show. I'm going to give out the phone number in the chat room when we are ready. But you could call in. We have a call screener, so the call screener is going to answer first. He's going to ask you what you want to talk about, and I'm going to pick up the call afterwards. But if you want to support the show, and the reason why we're doing this, guys, is because you guys are funding the show. And by funding our Patreon, we're able to do a call-in show. So this was one of our bonus content that we wanted to offer, and we're offering it now for you guys. So we're going to do a once-a-month call-in show. If you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/whatthetech. That's patreon.com/whatthetech. You can continue supporting us. I really appreciate everything everybody's doing. I'm really excited to hear from you guys about this phone and about the watch and about everything else that's happening. So I'm going to give out the phone number at the end of this show for the next one. Also, if you want to help us out, you could use our Amazon link by going to gfq.co/Amazon. Every time we make a purchase, we get a tiny little credit from that. And helps me upgrade everything that breaks in the studio, because a lot of stuff breaks. So that's about it for that. Paul, let's talk about the watch. I don't
Okay.
know. Now, before we go into the watch and I get called, a hater and people lost their minds by my reaction about this watch. This watch was not going to be that magic device everybody was hoping for.
Right.
For months, we've been saying it is impossible for Apple to produce this futuristic, rounded glass, clip-on thing that everybody thinks because some guy mocked it up on the internet about a year ago. We're not going to see that because if we were, other people would have done it by now. We would have seen somebody with this. I think a lot of people envision, Paul, like the Nike Fuel Band, but all like glass halfway through and just like, Apple Future-like.
Apple Future.
Yeah, like Apple Future-y stuff. Like,
No, I
you know what I mean? Like glowing. Yeah. It's just glowing.
No, I got it.
It's like a Honda Civic with like underbody lights.
Sure.
So everybody envisioned this thing. So what we got was what is on the market. What every other smartphone, smartwatch manufacturer is making right now. It's a screen with straps that are interchangeable. That's about it. The problem I have with this is not the functionality or the design, because nobody's really doing a great job at this. It's the price. Starting off at $350 for the smaller one.
Right.
Probably another $50 for the bigger one.
Yep.
So $400 out of pocket for this thing.
Yeah. For this thing.
It's a watch.
Yeah.
It's a smartwatch. What did you make of it? I mean, I really want to know your opinion of this. Like some of the one with the gold on the side, it's not bad looking. It's not a horrible looking watch. I'm not going to even, there's nothing wrong with the look of it.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, I find myself not caring about this kind of thing. And I think part of the reason is Apple looked at this and said, look, other companies are going to be doing this. Android is obviously a huge factor in this. They have such a huge ecosystem, lots of partners, et cetera, et cetera. Apple has a nice sense of design, but how can it really differentiate itself from the Android Wear type stuff? And I think the way they can do it is by making these kind of luxury metal devices, that are beautiful looking physically. The software is what it is. It's going to live or die on how well you think Apple's voice integration works, how their media services are, whatever. It's all that stuff's fine. I mean, that stuff works fine on Android too, by the way. So
what did you think of the UI? Because it's very un-Apple-like.
Yeah. That might be why it wasn't like iWatch too, right? That might be part of it.
That's a possibility. You're absolutely right. I mean, this does not look like, this is the most un-Apple-like product they have put out probably over the last decade.
When I complained about the original iPad, before we had our hands on with the iPad, I said, it's just a stretched out iPod Touch or iPhone. It's like a big iPod. And it is, because it is literally, I don't have to explain that. It's obvious that that's what it is. Now, the secret behind the iPad, which you needed to really spend time with it to understand, was that something about stretching the screen that big really made it kind of work. But the truth is, you took this exact same user interface and just stretched it out. I think with the watch, and I keep wanting to call it iWatch, by the way, they are adhering to kind of a different philosophy, which is that every form requires its own fresh kind of UI. Like that UI doesn't work. Like if you've ever used I think it's an iPod Nano that has a really small screen about the same size as this.
Yeah.
And they went with that kind of iOS style, icons. And it's, it's a little ponderous.
I don't
know.
I don't know what to make of this. And I was a little too negative of it, but it to me, it seems like you're absolutely right. Other people are doing it, so let's push this thing out and let's put it out. There's nothing. I mean, the weight seemed to be for no reason. I mean, this could have been put out with an iPod Nano. That Nano that that's how this whole thing started. A lot of people thought
that was a great thing for watches.
I thought it was great too. I thought it was the first of its kind. You knew exactly what it was. It wasn't expensive.
Right.
And you put a little strap on that thing, and now it was a watch. So if they had, I think if Apple had developed that a little bit and continued with that, this device would have been an evolutionary step for that nano type, smartwatch that we saw. But the fact that this is coming out in 2014, people have waited 2 years for this device. We've heard all the rumors about this thing, and a lot of people looked at Apple and as they would be the ones that put this watch that everybody wants out, and they're not. They're not.
Right.
I don't think they are that revolutionary company that they were, 5-6 years ago.
Well, okay, but to be fair, I do. We talked about what would Steve Jobs have released this thing? Is this how he would have done it? Yada yada. Steve Jobs might have put out an iPod Nano on a watch strap. I mean, this is maybe indicative of what's possible today. We'll look back on this and we'll laugh at how big it is, how thick it is, how terrible the battery life is. Just like we should about the original, ClickPad iPod or the first iPhone compared to today. You go back and watch the presentation that Steve Jobs gave for the first iPhone. He talked about how humongous the screen was and how thin it was and how light it was and how fast it was. And, those things are not the way we would describe that thing today because, things change. So this is a first step. I mean, I'm not interested in this in the slightest, but these devices are more elegant looking than the Android Wear thing that I've got sitting here in front of me. And that doesn't matter to me personally.
So Paul, are you into any of the smartwatches at all?
No, I mean, I wear a Fitbit, and a Fitbit is a stretch for me. I'm not really into jewelry. The Fitbit is, and I wore a Nike Fuel Band for a couple of years before that as well. Those things to me are about as small as I can, or as big as I can deal with on my wrist, I guess. And I can't explain why it's okay, but I mean, when I wore the Android Wear watch for weeks, and God, I just hated it. It was so ponderous. It was ponderous to put on. It was big and bulky. It would, if you bend your hand at all, you kind of get caught on it because it's so big. And these Apple devices look very similar. A little more elegant, obviously, and some of them are. I'm sure they're going to be expensive, but the metal design versions and the edition, the edition collection, handcrafted from 14 karat gold.
Is that what they said?
Literally, yeah.
They're saying that's handcrafted 14 karat gold.
One of them is, yeah. There's different versions. It's twice as hard as standard gold.
How much do you think that? Did they announce what the price on the other one's going to be?
The basic version is $349, and it goes up from there. There's a sport version. They didn't say. The sport version is mostly noted by its kind of rubberized plastic strap, and maybe that's the cheap one. I don't know. By the way, for certain people, for people working out, for people who might wear this kind of thing, a Fitbit otherwise, I mean, I'm sure there's a place for this kind of thing. But, the thing I like about the Fitbit is that I don't really have to look at it. I know it's just sitting there doing its thing. When I'm out on a walk or whatever, I might kind of look down. I only want to see one thing. In my case, it's like how many steps I've done for the day. I can see how far I've fallen short of my goal every single day, which is what usually happens. These displays with like time and temperature and apps and stuff, like I just don't really, to me, it's like, the one thing and I'm done. I don't want to look at other stuff. But I'm not everyone. And so some people obviously will want this, I guess.
Some people want it. Some people don't. I mean, it's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating looking at how they're selling this, but I just don't look at this and think, oh God, I got to get this.
Yeah. So we have a couple minutes left here because it has been a brutal day, and then we're going to do our after show, which everybody here watching is going to be able to watch, and you're going to be able to call in. If you were to take one thing from this announcement, just the entire thing pieced together, what would it be? That it's a different Apple now. I mean because
that's been ongoing, obviously. I don't know. I don't remember when this was. I think it was WWC 2013, but Phil Schiller came out and previewed the Mac Pro, and he said, "Can't innovate my ass." which I thought was a very childish kind of public reaction to criticism of the company at the time. I look at Tim Cook's thing today and I see the same semi-childish, like almost too excited to get this out, to finally get over this hump of you have never released anything truly new. He still hasn't. It's not coming out till next year. So I feel like the watch stuff is premature, and I'm sure it'll do fine. It's Apple, you know. But I'm more concerned with the iPhone part of it. The iPhone is interesting because there are no surprises to this thing at all. This is exactly everything we already knew, all of it. There's nothing new here. And yet, I really feel like this device, combined with the improvements in iOS, including some of the stuff you mentioned, the extensibility stuff in particular, is huge for Apple, and it is in some ways bigger than the iWatch because this is their most important market. This is over 50% of Apple.
Oh yeah,
they needed to get this right,
and
Apple,
I think they did.
Well, the problem for Apple is that they explode the MP3 player market. They blow everybody else away, and then that market just kind of falls to the wayside because bigger and better things have come, including the iPhone. The iPhone is huge, and it's still huge. It's still the best-selling single smartphone model. But from a platform perspective, market share-wise, down, down, down. It's been going every year. I'll bring out the iPad. The iPad is huge. It's going to destroy the PC. It's going to get, no one's going to use laptops anymore. Not so much. That starts declining. Actually declining, not slowing, but declining, which is something that didn't happen with the iPhone.
Did they anticipate that it was going to kill the PC?
Yeah, they talked about this post PC.
Yeah, I mean,
that's yes.
I think for some people,
that since it came out, this is going to kill the PC. This is not going to kill the PC. Sorry, it may ultimately sell more units. That could happen, probably will happen. But the expectation was this is the end of the PC, and the iPad in some ways has not lived up to that kind of hype or whatever. But it's still obviously a big deal. They need to get this. This is interesting for Apple because they've always moved on to the next thing. And this is the first time I think we're going to see an existing thing have a resurgence since the original Mac. Obviously, Steve Jobs rejuvenated the Mac. It was the first thing he did when he got back to Apple. This is like Apple rejuvenating the iPhone. Again, and it wasn't like it was falling off the face of the earth. But when you look at market share, I think this is going to reverse the trends we've seen. I don't think they're going to catch up to Android, but I think that downward trend stops. It goes up a little bit, and maybe it plateaus at a higher place. Anything they can do to go, to stop from going into single-digit market share, which is where they were heading, is humongous. And I think this stuff is good enough to make that happen. I think this answers the complaints, and I think it answers the requests that people have had around bigger screens, mobile payments, and NFC, and that kind of stuff. I just think it's huge. I think the iPhone 6 is huge, and which sounds like an Apple marketing slogan. Sorry, but
yeah,
this is the biggest thing they've ever. Yeah. So
excellent, Paul. Excellent. Well, that was I've been on the air for a couple hours, so we'll wrap it up a little early on this one, and then we'll do our post show. We're gonna be taking our phone calls. I haven't decided how I'm gonna release this one. I think I'm gonna release. I'll figure something out. I'll give you guys a little bonus, possibly. I may open this Patreon up as an example for everybody. Go to our website, gfqnetwork.com, winsuperside.com, all things Paul Thurrott. Paul is live tomorrow also on Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. You're busy. You're doing so much.
Yeah.
2 p.m. East every Wednesday on the Twit Network. Anything coming up, Paul? Any new projects?
Oh, shit. No, I mean, we're going to Vegas next week for, connections.
Yes.
So that's the next big thing for me.
Excellent. All right, guys. See you all next week. Take care.